Sorry about the delay. We had a couple of classes on Hamlet, and we will now discuss a few issues in relation to the text. Right? As If you have not read the entire play, we'll have a quick overview of the plot summary. So we know that um, the first scene is expository, as it is in any play, and we are acquainted with the issue on hand, with the two night watchmen reporting that a ghost is visiting Elsinore Castle, uh, and the two men who are at the watch are Bernardo and Francisco. So these are minor characters, right? And they report to a significant person named Horatio, who is, as we know, Hamlet's very dear friend. And this is quite disturbing, very intriguing. And well, there's a second time when they watch, and so Horatio sees, and then Hamlet is also witness, and it's all very dramatic. And the ghost tells Hamlet, so Hamlet, King of Denmark, tells Hamlet, Prince of Denmark, that he has to take revenge for his death. His own brother has killed him. It has been given out very falsely and wrongly as a natural death, but actually he was poisoned. There was poison poured into his ears while he was in the garden. And then we see the king and his bride, and it is so unacceptable that within a month of her husband's death, Gertrude has married his own brother. So there's something unnatural. It is something totally unnatural about everything. um, then we know that Hamlet is bent on revenge, but by nature he is a contemplative and thoughtful person. He thinks a lot. That is one thing we have to note about Hamlet. He is um, just to avoid being rash, he thinks, and then he ends up being very rash also. Uh, and then we know that the king sets up two people, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, to keep an eye on Hamlet, to watch him, because uh, the king observes that Hamlet's mood is not quite all right, and he suspects that Hamlet knows the truth. Um, and now that Hamlet is so disturbed by what the ghost of his father has told him, he um, slips into melancholy, and because he's being observed. So just imagine if somebody is watching you all the time, and you feel, someone breathing down your back, or being observed, being under surveillance. These days, with the cameras everywhere, we also feel that discomfort, that we feel that we are being watched. And after a point of time, we get accustomed to this idea. We even forget that there are cameras around. But when we are aware that there are cameras on us, we do not feel very comfortable. And that too, the cameras are looking at us. There are people behind those cameras looking at our actions with suspicion. So, because of this, Hamlet has to, he behaves mad, and his madness is a label that is attached to him. He's tagged as being a mad person. Well, Polonius believes that he's actually mad, because there are certain situations, especially in his Hamlet's treatment of Ophelia, that he sees that his behavior is crazy. And so now this is the what do you say? This is the play of fate, where Hamlet's madness is in a way established, but we know that Hamlet's madness is not real, but it is he's pretending to be mad because just wants to observe the king. Okay, he wants to observe the king's reaction. So, and that is why he sets, there's a group of traveling actors who come to the court, and he gets them to enact the scene of his father's murder because he wants to watch the king's reaction. And that, of course, upsets the king, and the king becomes very repentant. You can see there's one scene where the king is on his knees and he's crying out to God for forgiveness. At that time, Hamlet comes, and this is his moment to kill the king because the king is alone. But seeing him on his knees, Hamlet withdraws. Now, this can be construed as a mistake that Hamlet made, or it could be seen as his noble nature, where he didn't want to kill a man who was in prayer. So, in fact, in that scene, Hamlet says, well, if I get an opportunity to kill the king when he's on the bed with my mother, the incestuous bed, that would be more noble a revenge, not when he's praying. And then we see that Hamlet misses this opportunity to kill his uncle Claudius, the king. And meanwhile, uh, Polonius is uh, the queen. Yes, Hamlet decides to confront his mother, the queen, about her betrayal of of his father, and he just wants to make a clean breast of his feelings to his mother. Because, and there's these very powerful parts of the play where we see that he has this love and affection for his mother. He doesn't want to take revenge on his mother, but wants to take revenge on his uncle. But he wants to bring his mother to repentance. So revenge is for the uncle, Claudius. Repentance is for his mother. He wants to bring her to her senses about what she has done. Uh, but at that time, Polonius is behind the curtain, and actually, Polonius has they have made a pact with each other. Um, the queen, the king, and the queen have asked Polonius to hide behind the curtain and eavesdrop when Hamlet speaks. So the whole idea is to establish Hamlet's madness. But when Hamlet hears a sound from behind the curtain, he presumes it is the king, Claudius, his uncle, and he thrusts his dagger in, and the casualty is not the king, but Polonius. So Polonius falls dead. And then we know that um, this leads to Ophelia being so heartbroken and Laertes wanting to take revenge. Um, and then now that Hamlet um, has made things go against him by murdering Polonius, that's of course accidentally. Uh, it gives the king a chance to get rid of Hamlet, and Hamlet is dispatched to England along with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. And uh, the letter, he also gives a letter uh, bearing the orders for Hamlet to be put to death in um, England. But as we know, uh, Hamlet returns, And there is this, then Ophelia, of course, goes mad with grief for her father, and there's a gravedigger scene in Act 5. And that's when Hamlet quite inadvertently comes to realize that Ophelia has drowned herself. Ophelia has drowned herself with grief. And Laertes, who has gone to France, has returned because his sister died, and he is so grief stricken. And Laertes, uh, initially, Laertes is angry with the king, but then the king wins him over by saying that he is in no way guilty of Ophelia's death, and he foists the whole blame on Hamlet. So Laertes and Claudius, they come up with a treacherous plan in which there will be a duel, and to which Hamlet will be summoned, and Laertes will have a rapier which is poisoned. A rapier is a sword. Okay, he would have a sword which is poisoned, and they would also have a cup of wine which is poisoned, and that would be given to Hamlet to drink. Now, unfortunately, the queen drinks that goblet of wine, uh, that cup of wine, and she falls dead. Then, uh, in the exchange that they have, um, quite unexpectedly, again, it is a play of fate that their rapiers uh, are swapped there, and Hamlet gets the poisoned rapier. And so when the poisoned rapier is thrust into Laertes, Laertes confesses that he connived with Claudius and he used a poisoned rapier to kill um, Hamlet, and this was done as an act of revenge, and he was treacherous. So now, in all this, we um, see that Hamlet is a tragic hero because Hamlet is a noble person. Okay, his intentions are good, right? And um, right through, we see that Claudius is a villain. Gertrude is also uh, shows that she lacks character, she lacks strength of character. She's married the man who murdered her husband, and probably, in all probability, they must have had an affair even before he was killed. And so she might have been privy to all the schemings of Claudius. Well, that is not stated explicitly, though. And yeah, so coming to discussing the themes and topics related to the play, I'll just share a PPT. Can you see the screen? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, uh, so these are the topics for discussion that you can think of. Um, Hamlet as a revenge tragedy, Hamlet, the dramatic techniques. Okay, how Shakespeare as a dramatist makes it a very powerful tragedy. So, for this, you will have to look into all the ideas related to Greek tragedy, Elizabethan tragedy. So, first of all, there's a tragic hero, there's a tragic flaw, and then there's the play of fate, right? And there is violence also, violence. But here in this play, you see it as a revenge tragedy. So, revenge tragedy began with was also a kind of tragedy that the Elizabethan dramatists explored, and Seneca's The Spanish Tragedy is always cited as a uh, an exposition of that genre of revenge tragedy. What is what are the characteristics of revenge tragedy? We'll just see in the next slide. Then you have Hamlet as a tragic hero. So the tragic hero has a tragic flaw. Madness. Okay, madness in the play Hamlet, both madness you see in Hamlet, madness you see in Ophelia, but there's a difference. Madness in Hamlet is feigned. He pretends to be mad. Okay, he pretends to be mad because he feels he's under surveillance. He's being watched, and he also uh, puts on a certain act to evoke certain reactions from people to establish his point. Um, and madness, as I will tell later also, can be seen as trauma. Imagine when your mind is so deeply affected by what has happened, uh, you have, if not a permanent madness, a kind of temporary insanity is there. And the ghost in Hamlet is also a question that you get often. The grave digger scene in the last act. Um, see that is there's a lot of comedy and there are two clownish characters there, but it is very much like the Porter scene in Hamlet, where there is a kind of uh, comic, ironic prelude to a tragic scene. And what is that comic, ironic prelude to the tragic scene? So, whose grave are they digging? They're digging the grave of Ophelia. So, um, we have dramatic irony there. The audience is at a higher level of awareness, and they know that these grave diggers are digging Ophelia's grave. But poor Hamlet, who's engaging with them in a very light-hearted banter, doesn't realize that it is Ophelia's grave that they are digging until Ophelia's um, corpse is brought in by the pallbearers. Her dead body is carried. And then meta theater. So the obvious thing about meta theater here in the play is the play within the play. I've told you about it. How so Hamlet gets these people to stage a play, right? The the traveling actors who come and perform at Elsinore Castle. And apart from that, there are other elements of meta theater, which are like the soliloquies. So, two important soliloquies are there. One is the soliloquy by the Hamlet, to be or not to be, the famous one, and also the King's, where he prays and cries to God with a repentant heart. So, as I mentioned earlier, that revenge tragedy was a genre that was explored in Elizabethan drama, and Thomas Kidd was the earliest exponent of this form of drama. So, in revenge tragedy, there are some common elements, some characteristics. One is there's a murder, and there's a revenge to be taken for that murder. And in the course of taking revenge, uh, there are more murders than the murder that is targeted. So, in other words, there's a carnage. Many people are killed in the whole thing, and there's melancholy. Melancholy, though the person who is affected, the victim, the tragic hero, he's very depressed, and his or her melancholy leads him to do things that will make his life more tragic. And um, there's also betrayal, there is dishonesty, uh, adultery, evil. The presence of evil is there, presence of evil. And there's also a ghost. Ghost is also an important part of revenge tragedies. So often a ghost comes and uh, sets in motion this or unleashes this whole uh, series of actions, right? So, as I mentioned earlier, that you can see in the last point, most revenge tragedies end with a sense of carnage. Carnage, what's a carnage? It's just a mass killing, killing of many people. And what happens is, even the avenger is killed. That's what happens in Hamlet. Hamlet is also killed. So the person who takes revenge is killed. And he also avenges his um, the wrongdoing that he has endured, right? So in the process of avenging that, he kills the people who have done him wrong. At the same time, it's so tragic because he himself uh, gets killed at the end. Uh, so you see that it's series of unfortunate events, and that is why we say fate plays a very important part in this. The ghost tells Hamlet to take revenge, all right? So he's the first murdered person, the king Hamlet. Then he tells his son, Prince Hamlet, to take revenge. Then Polonius is murdered, all right? And that is an accident, totally unintentional. But this sows the seed of revenge in Laertes. Okay, Laertes wants to take revenge for the death of his father. And also, um, Hamlet's traumatized state of mind causes him to behave in a certain way, which is misconstrued as madness. And therefore, Polonius tries to disentangle Ophelia because she's his daughter. So he doesn't want his daughter to be in love with Hamlet, and he advises her to give up Hamlet. Well, so when he loses Ophelia, his sadness is, you know, uh, becomes unbearable, and the only love of his life is lost. And then he again, it's both feigned and real madness at that time. And so you find in terms of you know narrative, you find it melodramatic. Melodrama is what? It's exaggerated sadness, exaggerated tragedy. Does this really happen in life, right? So melodrama is a very important element of revenge tragedy. um, so in Encyclopedia Britannica, I got this definition of melodrama. It is there in sentimental drama, and it is definitely it's an improbable plot. When you look at the sequence of events that take place in Hamlet, certain things are strung together by the dramatist, but in real life, a tragedy of this nature may not have taken place. But certain misfortunes had to be strung together to give this magnitude to the tragedy. And so there are certain vicissitudes, certain negative results, certain um, things endured by some in certain injustices and certain um, negative fallouts of actions and reactions. And here you have the virtuous and the villainous. Now, who are the virtuous people in this? Definitely, Hamlet is a virtuous person, but Claudius is a villainous person. So also Laertes is a virtuous person, but he is set on to do a villainous thing because he is an aggrieved party. He is aggrieved because he's lost his father, he has lost his sister. And well, you have um, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Now, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are hired to do the wrong thing. You know, um, even in our culture, we have people who are employed to do something. They're employed to go and murder. They're employed to go and beat somebody up. Okay, so they are hired. They're given a payment. They're given a fee. So Rosencrantz and Guildenstern belong to that category. So they are absolutely uh, mercenary, or they just want to be in the good books of the King Claudius. So they are willing to do injustice to a good man like Hamlet. So Hamlet is the noble hero, and you have Claudius, the cold-blooded villain, um, in this tragedy. So there are elements of melodrama, and yeah, we know that catharsis is one of the um, features of Greek tragedy, isn't it? Even Aristotle said that it should be cathartic. That means when you see a tragedy, all your emotions should be uh, should be manipulated, as it were, by the dramatist, and you are purged of your emotions. So you are you are moved to tears, and all the copious tears that you shed leave you with a cleansed soul. Okay, a feeling of emptying pent up emotions, perhaps. So that is what catharsis is. Catharsis is total washing out. Okay, it's a purging of emotions. Um, yes, as I'm you know that there was a carnage at the end, and it's cathartic. So, and I also said that a string of misfortunes. So that is why at the end of the play, Horatio says, "Let me tell the story, even while it's the story of Hamlet, because only Horatio knows the real story, right?" Horatio is his true friend and he will speak the truth. And he knows everything from the first appearance of the ghost till the final uh, scene where all the dead bodies are lying there. And he says that he uses two words, mischance and errors. Okay. He says, let me tell the story so that, let's to avoid further mischance and errors. So these are two keywords, mischance and error. Um, so you can see the error in the killing of mischance and error in the killing of Polonius and its consequences in relation to Laertes and Ophelia. Poor Ophelia is grief stricken because her lover, Hamlet, killed her father. And Laertes is angry because uh, Hamlet killed Polonius. Little did they know the truth that it was an accident. Okay. Uh, so, what is the sad thing there that's happening to Hamlet? Fate is going against him and he's misrepresented. He's misrepresented because when the king rushes in on hearing Polonius fall, right, and all the commotion in the confrontation that Hamlet has with his mother, when the queen is lying on the floor and uh, you know grieving and bawling out in guilt and um, her feelings are so upset. At that moment, instead of telling the king, my son Hamlet helped me to realize that what I did was wrong, he's angry with me for marrying my husband's brother within a month of his death. And my son tells me that my husband was murdered. Instead of coming out with the truth, she says, Hamlet is definitely mad. He has killed Polonius. All right. So the whole misrepresentation of what has happened, and uh, Polonius has kind of earned his death in a way because he was spying on Hamlet. Hamlet did not know that he was behind the curtain. So this is again mischance and error. Then here you see Hamlet. People say they use the word procrastination as Hamlet's tragic flaw. So be that as it may, Hamlet is a noble person, noble at heart, and he doesn't want to kill the king while he is in prayer. And then you see um, the wine which the queen drinks at the end of the play, right? The poisoned wine, the wine which is meant for Hamlet, is drunk by the queen. Then the rapier which is poisoned by Laertes. By mistake, they exchange swords. So this idea of fate, whether bad things happen because of people's foolishness or weakness, or whether it happens because of fate, is a question for which there are many answers. All right. So some people would give more importance to fate, the role played by fate. Some people would say that we make our own destinies. There's one poem, isn't it, which says, I am the captain of my ship. I am the uh, master of my fate. I am the captain of my ship. I am the master of my fate. This is the assertion by some people. But here, uh, you know, it's put forward very poetically by Brutus and Julius Caesar when he says, the fault lies not in our stars, but in ourselves. Okay, that is a certain response to the uh, to life. So there are some people who think that we are in control of our destinies. There are some people who believe that the stars are in control of our destinies. Whatever is written for us in our horoscopes, that is what will happen. So the stars are in control. But so here, this kind of dichotomy, this binarism, this dichotomy about whether it's fate or whether it is human will. So this juxtaposition of fate and human will always be there. Um, so let's look at the sequence of how things develop, how the plot develops, and how it reaches this tragic culmination. So first, the ghost comes. All right. So Hamlet is sad, but his feelings and his inclinations are given a push by the coming of the ghost. All right, by his encounter with the ghost, and uh, Hamlet is melancholy. All right. And when Hamlet is melancholy, the king and queen address him and tell him that he should cheer up, and they want him to be happy. And king is suspicious as to why Hamlet is unhappy. So he sets up Guildenstern and Rosencrantz to spy on him. So what happens is Hamlet is very conscious of being observed, and so he feigns madness. He pretends to be mad. When he pretends to be mad, Polonius thinks that he's really mad. Okay, and because Polonius has a daughter called Ophelia, and Ophelia is in love with uh, Hamlet, and Hamlet in love with Ophelia, the father's concern for the daughter comes into play, and he also gets involved. Polonius gets involved in all the machinations or the things that are going against Hamlet. And when Polonius works towards separating Ophelia and Hamlet, Ophelia is sad, Hamlet is very sad, and the Hamlet is distressed, not only because of his father's death and his mother's betrayal, but also now there's this added uh, weight, added sadness of, and the rude shock of Ophelia uh, rejecting him. So when uh, she returns his gifts and she says that she can no longer be his beloved, he is absolutely shocked and he behaves in a certain way. So that could be taken as madness, or is that madness, or is that a natural reaction uh, to a shocking event? All right. So this also is being watched by the king and Polonius, who are hiding, and it's taken as evidence that he is mad. So then in this play, we also find that the spying and eavesdropping, hiding behind the curtain and listening, watching someone, intrigue. What is intrigue? Intrigue is very much a part of uh, life in a court. Okay, it's a very much a part of any political system. It's a part of kingdoms, and it's a part of uh, governance. All right. So even even in a democratic country, in a government setup, you'll find people who are spying on their colleagues, and spying on their subordinates and carrying tales, and these activities adversely affect the lives of people. So plotting and scheming against people in a power structure is what intrigue is all about. So, are you with me, girls? Uh, have you been? Have I been clear so far?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Any questions? Okay. Can I continue?
Yes, ma'am. You can continue, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Uh, so, this intrigue and spying and eavesdropping uh, is there are certain instances of this. One is Polonius behind the curtain, and Polonius witnesses Hamlet's behavior towards Ophelia, and then you see Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are spying on Hamlet. So, in all this, you see dramatic irony. We as the audience know what is happening. Uh, we are at a higher level of awareness than Hamlet, and that is where the irony lies. Okay, Hamlet doesn't know that Polonius is behind the curtain. We as the audience know it. Hamlet, when he is in his outpouring of grief at being rejected by Ophelia, and his, you could say, uh, violent reaction is observed by the king and Polonius, who are in hiding, and then they come on the scene. So that is taken as evidence and proof and reason for bringing keep bringing Ophelia out of Hamlet's life. Yeah, so we see now everything comes full circle. So that happens in a tragedy, that the wrongdoer has to be punished. All right, all the wrongdoers are punished. The queen swallows the poisoned wine. Laertes, he has a poisoned sword with which he plans to thrust um, Hamlet and kill him. But he does that. But at the same time, the the swords gets swapped, and Hamlet, uh, puts the poisoned sword into Laertes, and then it's a moment of confession. So Laertes says, "I am justly killed with my own treachery. It is here, Hamlet, thou art slain. No medicine in the world can do thee good. Indeed, there's not half an hour's life. The treacherous instrument is in thine hand, unabated and envenomed. The foul practice had turned itself on me. Lo, here I lie, never to rise again. Thy mother's poisoned, I can no more. The king's to blame." So Claudius is exposed. Now, Claudius being exposed is definitely no cause, no moment of triumph or celebration, because it's all happening in the midst of a carnage. Uh, we know that Hamlet is going to die, and we know, and the queen has fallen dead, and there is. So this brings to mind, why revenge? What has been achieved with revenge? Yes. Okay, revenge has been the driving force. Okay, the spirit of revenge, and at the end of it, what has been achieved? Okay, so then finally he asks for forgiveness. He says, the king is justly served. The king has swallowed the poison. Well, he deserves it. It is a poison tempered by himself, so he's the person who created that poison. Exchange forgiveness with me, noble Hamlet. Mine and my father's death come not upon thee, nor thine on me. Uh, he is fearing divine retribution. So retribution is another important word here. Retribution is you uh, get the punishment that you deserve. Okay, so here it is, whether it is divine retribution, so God or fate or the powers that be have served justice to the wrongdoer. I've already told you about meta theater. So you can, when you talk about meta theater, you can um, elaborate on how the traveling actors visited, and they had actually a play on Pyrrhus and Priam, and Hamlet sort of he diverted that to suit his purpose, and he asked them to include a narrative in which the actual story of his father's murder is played out. Just a moment. Yeah. Can you see the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
So when you discuss Hamlet as a tragic hero, this is a very important question about Hamlet being guided by the spirit of his father. And was that a guidance or a misguidance? Would the tragedy have been averted if he hadn't seen the ghost of his father? Is the ghost of his father a spirit of revenge? All right. Now, why? Let us think about this now, mm, metaphorically. Okay. Well, we know the ghost comes on the scene and the ghost speaks, and the ghost tells him to take revenge. But if you look at it metaphorically, if you look at it figuratively, is does that ghost represent the spirit of revenge? What would be your response? Do you think that that ghost is the spirit of revenge, or you would just take it literally as the spirit of Hamlet's father? What's your response? Okay. Now, Hamlet's tragic flaw, as we know, is he procrastinates, and he. This is because he is a very learned person, right? He's a prince, and he wants to behave in a responsible way. He wants to establish evidence. So, even though the ghost has told him, he doesn't want to act entirely on that. He wants to uh, you know, see his uncle's reaction at the time of staging this play. And you must remember that in all this, Hamlet is all alone. So even in our own lives, we are able to do things if we have support, if we have a support network also. If we, it's not having the support of one or two people will not suffice. He has the support only of Horatio. So if we look at the plot, try to imagine the plot from another angle. If um, Hamlet's mother, Gertrude, had not married um, Claudius, then Hamlet would have had the support of his mother. His mother would have stood by him. His mother would have uh, resonated the words of his father. His mother would have given him all the encouragement to go on, go ahead, and establish himself. Now, it's important to note that Gertrude is more keen on being queen than seeing her own son Hamlet as king of Denmark. So, if she were a true and loyal woman, if she were true and loyal to her husband, she would have worked towards making Hamlet the king, right? So there are some unexplored areas and some unanswered questions, and some things for which we can. There are strong suggestions, very strong suggestions. What are the strong suggestions here? That Gertrude was unfaithful to the king even when he was alive, right? And that is only how she could have married her own husband's murderer within a month of her husband's death. And secondly, that Gertrude was, anyhow, she was the queen when her husband was alive, and she was just concerned about her position as queen. Now, a betrayal is a very disturbing thing, and that too being betrayed by one's own kith and kin. So we know so many stories, we've read so many stories, we've watched so many movies about how people are not able to accept betrayal when it comes from their own flesh and blood. Don't we have, stories in our own families about father's own brother taking away all the property, not giving um, the rightful share to his own brother. And these are stories that are very outrageous and very disturbing, because this is unacceptable. How can a brother be so mean to his own brother? But human history is full of such stories. And you see that own mother has betrayed him. So he's all alone except for the support of Horatio. So can one person stand up to an establishment? See, Claudius has taken over the establishment. He's taken over the kingdom. And that is why Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are loyal to him, right? Even Polonius, though he is a scholar and he's a wise man, he is loyal to the king, right? Um, and there's also the power of the lie. Okay, in society, lies are um, lies percolate and permeate through society. In the king, the ghost of the king tells the son that there is a lie. The story put out is that he had a natural death. I just read that portion. Yeah. Yes, I'll read the speech of the ghost. I, that incestuous, that adulterous beast, with witchcraft of his wit, with traitorous gifts, O wicked wit and gifts, that have power so to seduce, one to his shameful lust, the will of my most seeming virtuous queen. O Hamlet, what a falling off was there from me, whose love was that of dignity, that it went hand in hand even with the vow I made to her in marriage, and to decline upon a wretch whose natural gifts were poorer to those of mine. And he continues to say, he says that he talks about how it all happened. He says, sleeping within my orchard, my custom always of the afternoon, upon my secure hour, thy uncle stole, with juice of cursed Hebenon in a vial, and in the pouches of my ears did pour the leprous distilment, whose effect holds such an enmity with blood of man that swift as quicksilver it courses through the natural gates and alleys of the body, and with a sudden vigor doth possess and curd, like eager droppings into milk, the thin and wholesome blood. So it did mine. Yeah, and then he says that the lie here is, it is given out that sleeping in my orchard a serpent stung me. So the whole year of Denmark is by a forged process of my death rankly abused. But know, thou noble youth, the serpent that did sting thy father's life now wears his crown. So I was telling you about the power of the lie. And the tragedy here again is the pursuit of truth, okay, and the desire to establish the truth. Now, in his desire to establish the truth, uh, he has become a broken vessel. There is a saying, no, if you do not bend, you will break. If you do not bend, you will break. So, if Hamlet had bent to his uncle's uh, will and wish, and Hamlet had also played. If Hamlet had also dissembled is a very important word. Dissembling is pretending. Okay. Now, this Queen Gertrude is very good at dissembling. All right. When Hamlet kills Polonius, instead of saying that this was an accident, and she dissembles at that moment that Hamlet has suddenly become mad and he has done a crazy thing. All right. So all the time you find that this dissembling, this happens even in society. People are not willing to overthrow the unrighteous people. And because the unrighteous people have power in their hands, and so if one has to be within a safe uh, place and protect one's own interest, they will not resist authority. They will not oppose the wrongdoer if the wrongdoer is powerful. So he's all alone. So I think Hamlet is, we often uh, give too much importance to Hamlet's procrastination, that he delayed, he that was his tragic flaw and this and that. But just think of Hamlet as a person, one individual who is up against a whole system, and he has no support except that of Horatio, and he is bereft of father in such tragic circumstances. He and always there's a strong bond between mother and son, and for a son to find that his mother is in a relationship with her father's murderer is very agonizing for him. Right? Gives you a lot of pain in his heart. So I've told you earlier about this madness. Whether there are, when you talk about the madness, it is feigned. There are so many uh, instances in the text where Hamlet is pretending to be mad, right? And one of the things is when he stages the play, right, about his father's murder. Uh, the king is very angry with him and he asks, "What's the title of this play?" He says, "The Mousetrap." And now and then he behaves like a clown. He behaves um, irrational. He utters words that look like he is mad. And this, tendency to spy on people, it seems to be the culture of the time. You see, even Polonius telling Rinaldo to have an eye on his son Laertes. His son Laertes is going to France, and he tells Rinaldo, "You watch him. Watch where he is going. Is he going to brothels? How he is spending his money?" And you provoke him with a kind of question about his character. And if he defends himself, that may be an indication that if he that he is he's leading an honest life. So the father, Polonius himself, doubts his own son. As I said, that this madness is also because of grief, trauma. So is madness another word for trauma? Um, then it is also when you look at the two words sanity and insanity. The people who are in Claudius's system are sane people are Rosencrantz, Guildenstern, Polonius. So people who are pro-establishments who are in that power structure, who are enjoying security in that power structure. They are normal. Those who are against that power structure, they are mad. So let me put it in very simple terms. If there is a person, a boss who is very rude, very mean, everybody will will flatter that boss and say, "Yes, you are right." And if there is some person who opposes that boss or disagrees, then people will say, "Sir, he's something is wrong with him. He has some complex. He has some issues, some psychological issues." So, who is mad and who is sane is a big question, right? So Polonius here says over here, tells the king, "Sir, I have found the very cause of Hamlet's lunacy." King says, "Oh, speak of that. That too I long to hear." Right. And this even Polonius hiding behind the curtain is to find out why, to arrive at his conclusion about Hamlet's lunacy. And then, of course, Polonius is, when you talk about characters, Polonius is a very wise man. All right. He uh, he observes. He's an old person. He's an experienced person, and I had already drawn your attention to the words of wisdom that he had given to his son in when his son leaves from France. First of all, to thine own self be true. Give every man thy ear, but few thy voice. Do you remember that speech? Yes. Yeah, that is in Act 1, Scene 3. So when his son is leaving for France, he gives him a lot of advice. So please read it in Act 1, Scene 3. There my blessing with thee, and these few precepts. Precepts is principles in thy memory. Be thou character, give thy thoughts no tongue. Don't speak out your mind. And then in this passage only you have those great words, neither a borrower nor a lender be. Do you remember all that? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So, as I said, Hamlet's the words of a wise man like Polonius also go against Hamlet because Polonius doesn't know the truth. Polonius doesn't know why Hamlet is behaving like this, right? And so Polonius misconstrues. So Polonius is a courtier who gives advice to the king and whose advice is dependable. But even this goes against Hamlet. So there's a lot of discussion on Hamlet's madness in Act 2, Scene 2. Uh, so this he comes to this conclusion because Ophelia shows him a letter written by Hamlet, and which Hamlet has used very um, you know intense words to describe his love for Ophelia. And he says that this is proof that he is mad. Now, this madness, okay, this madness is the madness of a lover, right? So, this madness of a lover is also misrepresented, misunderstood. I'll just read one passage. I would fain prove so. He's talking to the king. But what might you think? When I had seen this hot love on the wing as I perceived it, I must tell you that before my daughter told me, what might you, oh my dear majesty, your queen here think? If I had played the desk or table book or given my heart a winking mute and dumb, what might you think? No, I went round to work, and my young mistress thus I did speak. Lord Hamlet is a prince out of thy star. This must not be. And then I prescripts gave her. Admit no messengers, receive no tokens, which done, she took the fruits of my advice and he repulsed a short tale to make, fell into a sadness, then into a fast, then to a watch, thence into a weakness, thence to a lightness, and by this declension into the madness wherein now he raves, and all we mourn for. Polonius advises Ophelia not to, uh, have a love affair with Hamlet because Hamlet is much beyond her reach. Okay, he's a prince. So he tells her, you don't be in love with him because he's a prince. He's beyond your star. All right, he's beyond your reach. And that advice makes Ophelia withdraw from him. And when Ophelia withdraws from him, he reacts as any lover would do. And this is misinterpreted as madness. You just see his grief and his trauma. And they are the feelings of a frustrated person. Then Hamlet is very much a frustrated person because he says Denmark is a prison, right? Denmark is a prison, and for which Rosencrantz replies, "The world is one." So many times when we are unhappy, in the place where we are, if you're unhappy in your house, you feel your house is a prison. If you're unhappy in your place of work, your workplace is a prison. And there's another very famous line in this Act 2, Scene 2. Polonius says, though this be madness, yet there is method in it. Though this be madness, yet there is method in it. Please make a note of that. This idea of method in madness is there. This expression is used even in King Lear. There's method in madness. And Shakespeare's use of this term has, popularized this method in madness. Okay, so well, madness. What is madness? It's a state of mind. Okay, and in Tamil we have some expression like karya paityam. They say, oh no, that person is not really mad. She's sometimes mad, sometimes she's very clever. All right, so madness is some kind of heightened awareness also. Heightened awareness. It is also disturbing the equilibrium. Okay, so we have a certain balance, all right, and that balance is disturbed. So it's just an expression of feelings, of disturbed feelings, of pent up feelings. So you could just read it as an expression of feelings, or you could read it as madness. And Hamlet is, as I said, why this procrastination? Why is he a tragic hero? Because he's a very thoughtful person, he's a contemplative person, he's an intellectual. And he says these wonderful words in Act 2, Scene 2. What a piece of work is a man! How noble in reason, how infinite in faculty, in form and moving, how express and admirable, in action how like an angel, in apprehension how like a god, the beauty of the world, the paragon of animals, and yet to me, what is this quintessence of dust? That is, man is dust. Man delights not me, no, nor woman neither, though by your smiling you seem to say so. Rosencrantz says, my lord, there was no such stuff in my thoughts. Why then did you laugh when I said, man delights not me? Okay, leave that. Now, when Hamlet hears of his, realizes that his mother is, been, has betrayed and his mother is living in this incestuous relationship. Why we say incestuous? Because she's married her brother-in-law, someone who's like a brother to her husband's own brother. So she's in this incestuous relationship, and she has betrayed her own husband. So he uses the word frailty, the name is woman. So when he is angry with Ophelia, you can see that he's bringing the baggage, he's carrying over the baggage of his mistrust of his mother. So he comes to think, are all women like this? Are all women undependable? So you can see that the madness or the behavior, the burst of anger or uh, unacceptable behavior has a reason. So there is some reason in madness. So there is reason in madness. Just remember that there is reason in madness. I've spoken already about the ghost. So some words for the ghost are illusion, apparition. So illusion is you see something that doesn't exist. So you imagine it. And then apparition also approximates to that. Now there's a point where only Hamlet sees the ghost of his father when he's confronting his mother, but the mother doesn't see. But there are scenes where the ghost is seen by 2 people, by 3 people. So why I'm bringing up this thing of 3 people seeing the ghost is it is not one person's imagination. All right. If a single person reports, it's an illusion, it's an apparition. It could be just imagination, but 3 people have seen. I've already told you about the gravedigger scene and the importance of that meta theater. And so once again, we'll just go do a sort of review of these characters. The King Claudius, he is a usurper. He's usurped the throne. He has dealt falsely with his brother, and he's a murderer. And well, in the whole saga of revenge, the wrong deed that he did turns back on him, and he killed his brother by poisoning, and he himself consumes the poisoned uh, cup. Okay. To change the spelling. Right. Queen Gertrude, a woman who's not faithful to her husband, and there's dissembling, pretending, acting in her, and then you find a very repentant Gertrude when Hamlet confronts her, and you find a very sad Gertrude at the time of Ophelia's funeral, where she is putting the flowers into Ophelia's grave, and she says, "I would have had you as my Hamlet's wife, and I would have put flowers, uh, for your bridal bed, but now I'm putting them in your grave." Polonius, a wise man who gives wise counsel. The speech of Polonius is oft quoted, but this wise man's observations, with he comes to wrong conclusions. He comes to wrong conclusions, and it his deeds exacerbate, or it heightens. It worsens things for Hamlet. Um, Laertes is his son, and Laertes also connives with the king to kill Hamlet, but again, in a way, justice is done. That Laertes is killed by the poisoned rapier that he had kept for Hamlet. Ophelia. Ophelia, when we talk about Ophelia, we can talk about her uh, one of her madness in Ophelia's madness, you see, actually it is her grief. Again, that is there in Act 4, Scene 5. So people report that Ophelia is mad because she's singing. She's singing and she's having flowers with her. Uh, and Laertes describes her condition as a document in madness. A document in madness. So Ophelia is grieving the death of her father and says, and he will not come again? And he will not come again? No, no, he's dead. Go to that deathbed. He will never come again. His beard was as white as snow. All flaxen was his poll. He's gone, and we cast away. God have mercy on his soul. So she's singing all this. So when she's singing this, she's taken for a mad woman, but she's only grieving the death of her father. But there are, certain bursts of mad behavior, as you say, because in the play you see her laughing, and then she's having all these flowers and singing, and then you know that she commits suicide. She drowns herself. All right, her grief is so heavy that she drowns herself. Now, who has caused the death of Ophelia? Okay, fate, Hamlet, Polonius. It's a question to be answered. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are like hired assassins. They are hired to do the wrong thing. Horatio, you can put him down as a true friend. So these are a few quotes. So Hamlet is not mad. So when he behaves as if he's mad with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, but then after behaving mad, he tells them, "I know that you have been sent here to spy on me. The queen and the king have sent you." So these are Polonius's words on Hamlet's madness. Though this be madness, yet there is method in it. And as I said, Hamlet feigns madness. He pretends to be mad. So there's one point when he calls Polonius a fishmonger. So Polo is Hamlet is actually mm, trying to annoy Polonius. He's not mad, but he tries to annoy. He puts on this act of madness to annoy people because he's so angry, right? And so when we look at let's go once again to the sequence of events. Yeah. The ghost comes, visits him, sets him on the path of revenge. Then the king feels uncomfortable with Hamlet's melancholy, and the king tries to find out why Hamlet is melancholic. Then Hamlet, he pretends to be mad because he just wants to put the king off his trail, and then this madness becomes a concern that brings Polonius into the picture, and Polonius wants to separate Ophelia from Hamlet. And when he works towards separating Ophelia from Hamlet and he achieves it, Hamlet gets really even more upset, and he's traumatized. And then we see that Hamlet, um, because this kind of surveillance on Hamlet, Hamlet accidentally kills Polonius, and Rosencrantz, and the king uses this opportunity to pack off Hamlet to England, accompanied by Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. But finally, Hamlet comes back to England, and unfortunately, by that time, Ophelia has drowned, and then Laertes is still in the mood to take revenge, and then we finally have this carnage. So Hamlet, when he, in his dying words, he says, he tells Horatio, "Oh, good Horatio, what a wounded name! Things standing thus unknown shall live behind me. If thou didst ever hold me in thine heart, absent thee from felicity awhile, and in this harsh world draw thy breath in pain to tell my story." And then there's good news. There's news that no, it's not good news. Fortinbras has come. Now, who's Fortinbras? He's the king of Norway. And Fortinbras is the person whom Hamlet's father fought. So actually, there is a war situation which Hamlet's father faced, and he won back lands that were taken away by Fortinbras, and he has secured Denmark. Now, again, Fortinbras has come to invade. So this is also so tragic because the kingdom of Denmark is unstable. So who caused this instability? This instability came because of Hamlet's instability. All right. And this Hamlet's instability was caused by the murder of his father. All right. And probably, what Claudius was looking for from Hamlet was that Hamlet would support him, that Hamlet would stand by him and be the loyal son to him. But on the other hand, he took the path of revenge, and an unstable kingdom invited the attention of the enemy, and Fortinbras arrived at that moment where all who were connected to the throne, the queen, uh, Hamlet, the king, all were lying dead. So this is how the play ends. And before he gives his last breath, he says, Fortinbras has my dying voice. So tell him with the occurrence, more or less, which have solicited, the rest is silence. So that is the poetic line there. The rest is silence. The Fortinbras arrives on the scene and he says that let four captains bear Hamlet like a soldier to the stage, for he was likely, had he been put on, to have proved most royally. Now, that is the final word about Hamlet. Hamlet has behaved in a regal way. Hamlet has behaved like a royal person. All right. Hamlet has behaved noble, though at the end of it, Hamlet has himself died, and this is what makes it all a tragedy. I'll stop there, girls. Thank you for attending.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.